What's going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well. This week is going to be all about that nonfiction narrative that we need to write. And you may or may not know this, but you might already have two of the five paragraphs written. Like, if you've done it correctly, you already have those paragraphs written. You'll just have to add more detail. And we'll talk about what that means, adding more detail. You may have seen that on the Google form when I leave my comments and you don't get all the points. It's probably because you're missing some detail. So if you look, red roses, final assessment, the last question was worth 10 points. And I'd asked you to come up with 2 paragraphs or 10 sentences to get those 10 points. So what I did was, because I already wrote mine, before. So I had my 2 paragraphs. And what I did was I went back to the Google form, red roses. And I just hit like Command C, that little trick, right? Command C to copy everything. And then I opened up Google Doc and then I copied that onto there. I pasted it, Command V. If anybody needs any help with that, but I mean, you're probably all know that technology stuff. I'm not talking to 40-year-olds here. So I just copied that onto a Google Doc. So for this nonfiction narrative, I am asking for 5 paragraphs. All through high school, that's going to be the typical amount of paragraphs you're going to need for pretty much any kind of essay, the 5-paragraph essay. So for your nonfiction narrative, you're going to want to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, introductory paragraph, and then a conclusion. So we could talk about all of that stuff as the week goes. So these are due on Friday. I probably won't get them in until a little bit later, but hopefully you'll have 5 days to get 5 paragraphs, to proofread, all that stuff. And then by Friday, you should have a pretty finished copy. And then throughout the week, I'll just be chiming in with what I'm doing. How about that? So let's take a look at mine. This is when I wrote about my driver's license and how I took it when I was 16 and then I failed. And then I'm going to tell you where I can add some more detail for that beginning, middle, and an end. Hopefully you'll be using some of the things that we've talked about, like exposition. Put that into your nonfiction narrative. Makes it a little bit more believable. You don't want to just have everything start right at the beginning. You can give a little backstory as you go. So let's make this bigger. And let me start off with reading. So the question that was on Red Roses was, what rite of passage has held the most significance for you or for a person you know well? So you don't have to. Now, you can, if you want, just totally reinvent the wheel, and then you can write something completely different if you don't like what you wrote before, but that's up to you. I say, why make things harder? I think I can turn this into a nonfiction narrative. I got the pieces here to start. So an easy thing to do is just like for your first sentence, pretty much, is like rewrite the prompt. The rite of passage that has held the most significance for me is getting my driver's license when I was 18. So that first sentence, if you did it correctly, you are telling the reader exactly what they're going to read. And that's what you want to do at the beginning of any essay, is pretty much come out and tell the reader, all right, in this essay, you're going to learn this. And I did that. Okay. Make it a little bigger. Continue. Yeah. Now I am writing in a way that we call like very colloquial, not an easy word to say, very colloquial. It's just like how somebody might speak. Like you can put your voice in to this nonfiction narrative. It is about you, right? When we get into informational writing, research, probably not. But for this one, it is okay. It's okay. So you can write exactly pretty much how you talk. I mean, take out the ums and, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was 18 years old when I finally got my driver's license. By then, all of my friends had theirs. I actually felt pretty embarrassed that I hadn't gotten mine yet. When I first took my test, I was 16. I failed. My parents urged me to take the test again as soon as possible, but I was honestly afraid of failing for the second time. Now, right here, this part, I think that's a good part that I can actually expand upon and give more details. So already I'm planning on when I add to this, or I wouldn't call it a rewrite, but when I add to this and change the structure of it to make it 5 paragraphs, I'm going to hone in on that. Like, I want to give more detail about how I failed, why I failed, maybe what some of my friends uh, told me after I failed. Of course, it's a good amount of ribbing, good amount of making fun of me when I failed. I think it happens to everybody if you fail. But I mean, a lot of my friends did fail. So I can go into that a little bit. And then I'll talk about why I was so afraid to take it a second time. I have more. I don't have to just have 2 paragraphs here. I can add to it. So I'm going to go into that. Yeah. And maybe, I don't know how many teachers will tell you this, but like, none of you were there when I failed. None of you know what my friend said. Like, you can embellish. Now, you don't want to outright lie, because then your reader might not believe you. But if you make it just a little bit worse than it really is, or maybe a little bit better, but just like turn up the emotion, whatever emotion was really happening that day, you could just, don't go to 10, because that might be unbelievable. But you can go to like 5, 6, embellish, add some details. Maybe you misremember things, Over time, stories tend to grow. So it's okay. I know it's nonfiction, so everything should be real. It shouldn't be fake. But if it's based on truth, Hollywood does this all the time, right? Make it a little more interesting. I'll never know, of course, unless you like make it unbelievable, but make it still believable. But you can embellish. Don't tell anyone I said that. Don't tell your other teachers. But if you embellish, it's not the end of the world, I think. All right. The next part here in blue, and in a way, I didn't really need my license. My friends pretty much drove me wherever I needed to go. I just throw them a couple bucks for gas. That's another place I could expand upon. I could talk about some of the things that we did in middle school or in high school. Some of the, just a couple stories. This is only 5 paragraphs, so I can't go into a great amount of detail. And I do want to stick to the fact that getting my license at 18 was a huge rite of passage. But you can throw some color in there. Let the reader kind of feel like they were there with you. So that first paragraph, I'll probably expand on how I failed the first time, and then what my friends and I did, how like I didn't even need a driver's license. All right, so the next paragraph here, let me share it, make it bigger. The last paragraph, but when I finally had that little card in my hand and I had to stare back at that horrible picture that looked like I had just stolen something in a mugshot, the feeling of freedom surged through my body. All right, so here I actually used a simile, using like or as. I use a simile. So anytime you can throw in that figurative language, that's good. Similes, idioms, personification, that kind of stuff. So I might try to do that a little bit more on my rewrite here when I expand upon it. And I kind of glossed over the fact that I did take the driver's test. So in a paragraph, I could like just talk about getting that driver's license, like what, some of the feelings, like maybe my palms were getting sweaty. Maybe my hand slipped off the steering wheel when I first tried to get in the car to take my driver's license, something like that. Try to put the reader there with you, whatever that rite of passage is. Add, we call it sensory details. Okay. We've talked about it very briefly in here, but what did it smell like? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? What did it smell like? Did I say that twice? Yeah, just all of the senses. Try to do that. Smell is huge. Smell is huge. So, and we can always work on that with your, once you have a first draft, we can talk about like how you can, if you need help with that, let me know. All right. And I'll probably do a little bit more of that in my second write through here. I no longer needed to beg my friends for a ride. I was now able to control the music that we listened to. In my friend group, the driver was in charge of the music. if you have a car and gas money, you can pretty much go wherever you want. In fact, this past summer, I drove over 2,000 miles just to see my favorite band play their first concert in over a year and a half. So I think that's a good start. It's a good start. I definitely have to add like 3 more paragraphs worth of writing. But if you've done your red roses and you got the 10 points and it looks like you did a pretty good job or whatever, like you're sort of, I wouldn't say you're 2/5 of the way done because you might need to rework that, but like you got a good head start. And I think one of the hardest things about writing is staring back at that blank white page, like just nothing on there. So you don't have to worry about that. You can copy and paste. At least you got something to work with. Get a Google Doc open. It's going to save it for you. If you want, you can open up another Google Doc and paste it just in case you change it too much. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I want to go back to the original. Or you can always keep it. You'll have it on Red Roses anyway. So, yeah, let's talk about that throughout the week. Hopefully by the end of the week, you'll have a pretty polished, finished project. All right.